Hello and welcome everyone to this evening's Mapping It Out. My name is Guy and I will be your host for this evening as we unpack and explore just what has been happening to our beloved piece of software known as DEIOS. Now tonight we're going to be looking at the new patch which comes out in October. What is in that? And let me tell you, there is some pretty cool stuff that is in there. We're going to get a demo from Till, of course, and then we're going to look at a few little bits and pieces that have been done under the hood, which I think is actually pretty cool, especially if you watched last month's stream where we saw some of the bugs that came along with the brush tool that allowed us to start adding color to those maps. So very, very exciting stuff. And then a little bit of an update on the Map Battle Madness, that event that took place last week. If you haven't checked that out, look for it on the DungeonFog YouTube channel. You will find a long version as well as a cut down version. And of course, the winner of that will be announced on Thursday, the 30th of September. So stay tuned for all of that, plus more. So without delaying anymore, I just need to say, if you have questions, type the word question in caps lock and put that in front of your question as you drop it into chat so that I can see it, and then I will ask it to Till and get an answer for you. So please remember to do that. Till, welcome to the show.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Hello, Guy. My most appreciated fight contestant, enemy of the battle. It was a lot of fun last week.
It was a lot of fun, but so much stress. So
Yeah.
much stress. And we were busy chatting before the show started. We were just saying how, having looked back at that, and to give you some context, if you haven't seen it, Till and I were going head to head to draw maps in DungeonFog Battle Map Editor in a 3-hour block. We only had 3 hours to create our maps, and we were just fighting it out with extra challenges, changing it up and going crazy. And yeah, we were just saying how you look back and you go, but why didn't I do this, or why didn't I do that?
Yes. Oh my God.
Absolutely. But I think that is one of the joys that we have. I mean, I am old enough to remember when I used to draw my maps on paper. And I was never someone who would draw it in pencil first and then go back in pen. I would just draw in pen. And so many times I was drawing and I would hit the edge of the page, or I would forget what I had planned to do. And then you just had to live with it. Or use Tipex, I don't know, whiteout or whatever it is, like a white paint to paint.
No, I think a great advice is not only for battle maps, I think for world maps, all the like, is sleep over the stuff that you're doing. Revisit it the next day. When I sat down the next day and started cutting the video, and I was looking at the map I did, I was like, oh, come on, why didn't you think about that yesterday? So I think I'm going to spend one evening just reworking the map to what it should have been. Unfortunately, it's not going to help me for the 30th because that map is locked in. But I wanted to say, just to cycle back to DEIOS, because we were talking world maps here, I could picture that the next map battle is not about a battle map, but is about a world map.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's even more terrifying in one way.
It is,
because it's potentially a bigger space. But yeah, all right. So there we go. Let's make that our goal for 2022, is to have a DEIOS map battle. Right, Till, we are not here to talk about our failures as map makers, or successes, really. It has been a month, though, since we last had a DEIOS catch-up, and every month you guys seem to be bringing out a new patch. You're updating stuff. So when is the next patch coming out?
I have last-minute confirmation from the devs that they said they want to finish and release this patch. I don't have a calendar in front of me. Friday next week, which is 4th plus 4, the 8th?
Friday next week is the 8th, correct.
I'm so good at math. I actually didn't calculate. I was trying to picture the calendar and count.
Oh, good job. Good job.
Right. So Friday next week is our goal. That's what we're aiming for. The reason why it took a little bit longer is because, as I explained in the last stream that we had, is we were waiting on a patch bug fix from the user interface framework. And it has been deployed, but it has been deployed rather late. So now we're working all of the components that are affected by this update. Now we're reworking them, adding them in. And that also gives us an additional week to add a few things that weren't quite finished. But again, my devs confirmed that they will be finished then. So we're going to add that for the patch. And what specifically that is, I think we're going to see today, or at least give an outlook today.
Okay. So what is included in the patch? Or what are you hoping to include in the patch?
Let me bring up my notes here. Nope, that's the bug list. Okay, so the text tool, text editing labels and fonts and the UI for that, so that you can select and edit and shift, rotate, undo, redo stuff with the text tool should be in there. We've reworked the color picker to be much more effective for the brush tool. And now we're going to slowly expand that to all tools that need a color picker or texture picker. There's a lot of bug fixes in there, as well as some additional stuff like localization, for example. So the next patch is going to be, interestingly enough, English, German, and Russian. But because we have Russian developers, they already translated to Russian as well. And we're going to, I'm not sure if it's going to happen with the patch or somewhere around that date. We're going to launch a little translation website where you can help us if you want to, and translate it into your preferred language. And then we can grab those translations and add them as language selection in there. But the framework's there, and it is going to be available in English, German, and Russian for the stuff.
Very cool. Very.
And on top of that, I do remember that there are other things that I haven't written down because my devs were just throwing them at me. Well, a few surprises, apparently.
A few surprises. You also mentioned to me that the AI had been tweaked a little bit.
We don't have an AI in there yet,
Not
but the
AI. UI. Sorry, my brain. Yes, we've now added an AI. It will draw all your maps for you.
Exactly. You just have to say, hey, Cortiri, do me a continent. Yes, the UI. Well, the thing is, with Noasis, which is the new UI framework, we're getting used to it. So it has been a new framework, and we've added it. So we're gaining speed, which means that now we are finding those neat little tricks that you can do, like, for example, animation on loading, stuff like that. It's basically just it's not really crucial, and it's also not things that should eat a lot of time, but it's great exercise for the UI devs to get used to it, working with it. And so there's more and more how would you call that, gadgety stuff as well as user flow stuff that's being added.
I like it. Chat is just busy saying that the name for the
UI for the
AI is Fogtana.
Fogtana.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, Fogtana, draw me a map. Okay, so we're going to have a bit of a demo in a little bit of the new stuff that is in there. It's well worth having a look at because I think it's quite spectacular. It's funny how just adding in a few labels here and there just really makes a map come alive.
Yes.
But before we get there, you said there was some bugs, and you looked like you had a whole book full of bugs, or is it just a little list of bugs?
Well, it's not the whole book is not filled with bugs. It is actually, yes, there are still, I mean, there are bugs that we discover while we test recent builds. There are bugs that have been on the known issues list back from the latest patch. And the two most critical bugs, I believe, were that when you erase landmass, you kind of kill your brushes on the landmass. So that has been fixed. There have been a few anti-aliasing problems that have been fixed. There was a problem with expanding a landmass that created those weird rectangular texture relics for your brush. That has been fixed. And the undo redo for brushes is in the works. However, this is really complicated because it's kind of intertwined on so many levels. So this is most likely not going to be finished. It's either being partially finished or we're going to add that as a second patch afterwards.
Okay. And for someone like me, how do you fix a bug? I mean, what is it? Just code that was incorrectly written, or is it a spelling mistake?
I think, honestly, I wouldn't say that I'm the ideal person to answer that because I'm not a coder, so I can't really tell. From my perspective, let's talk about how do we identify bugs. What we do is we have the internal testing, which means it runs through a first internal testing by the developers. And when they do a merge request, which means that when they commit their code to the general code base, it's getting reviewed. So a lot of stuff that might cause a crash is already identified before it has been tested in the first place. And then it runs through testing. So the developers are testing that with edge case scenarios that they have prepared, and then they hand it to me. What I'm doing is, I think the proper term is monkey testing, which means that I'm just trying to use the software and see where it breaks. And we have several different tools where we collect those feedback. And then it's often a discussion of, that's quite a typical discussion, actually. Is it a feature or is it a bug? Which kind of is always, I'm like, this is a bug. The developer is, no, this is a feature. And I'm like, but it's a bug. Well, okay. So we kind of then decide that this is not actually, that crashing while rotating is not actually a feature.
Okay.
So then we decide on the bug, and then you have to actually find the exact, so you need to reproduce it. You need to have it reproducible, otherwise it's kind of a wild card, and you never really know what is causing the bug. And that often is the worst part, because sometimes a bug doesn't occur all the times, but only sometimes, and then you need to understand why. And then it's fixed in coding. It's programming. You need to go back to your formulas, you need to go back to your functions, and there might be two functions that are not talking to each other the way they should. Something is referenced badly, or your formula is just doing the wrong math.
Yeah. Well, there you go. All right. Now, we spoke a little bit about the UI that had been tweaked and adjusted, and you also mentioned the color picker. Does it allow you to pick colors from the props themselves as well, or is it only from the color canvas at the moment?
So at the moment, we're differentiating between the pipette, the eyedropper, which would be something where you aim at a color and pick it up. And the color picker per se is the field that you activate to choose the color that you like. So right now we're finishing up that, but we already have the eyedropper on the list. So we know that this is something that we need to add because you're going to use that quite often. There's just basically the only thing missing apart from programming it is one specific definition that we have been discussing over, and that is, if you pick up the color from a brush, Do you want the original color that the brush had, or do you want the result color of the mix that happened because the brush is probably at 40% opacity? So if you would put a green with 40% opacity on a yellow, you would get something brownish. Do you want the brown or the original green? And we haven't really kind of, yeah, it's open for decision. We don't know what would be the better approach.
I would imagine, because that's a very good problem to have in one sense of the word. I would imagine that if you hold down Alt, you'd get the combined color, but if you just didn't hold down Alt, you'd get the original color, perhaps as a solution. I don't know. What do I know? Because I can imagine both instances being absolutely valid.
Yeah, I know that one of the instances, which is the original color, is a lot more complicated.
Right, because it would have to look at what the original...
Exactly. Whereas the other one is basically just read the RGB value of where my mouse pointer is currently. So I would say from the way that we've introduced features over time in the past, there will be the simple solution will be out quickly, and the complicated solution will be then added in one of the iterations where we improve stuff.
Absolutely. Till, where does this leave us in terms of the rest of the year? We've got a roadmap. Shall I bring that up and we can discuss that?
Of course, yes.
Okay, there is the roadmap. You want to talk us through it?
Yes. So the current in the works is basically showing what we're currently working on, and I think a lot of that has been discussed already. So loading and upgrade screens are being finished, so that when you click on a map, you don't have to kind of idle, and you don't know is the software responding or not, but you will see that now the software is calculating something. If you remember I can't remember, 1.2 million asset map I did, that took 9 seconds to load, which means 9 seconds where I do not know if the software is still doing something. So that is being fixed and is being finished. The brush undo redo is in the works, but again, it's not upcoming for this patch. It might be for a later patch. Regarding tools, color brush improvements are upcoming. So all the things that we did to color brushes, which is render quality and handling and bug fixing, that is done. The text tool is upcoming, which is currently in the making. We're finishing up the UI at the moment and kind of fine-tuning everything. Blueprints is already in the making. We've started with blueprints, and with the stuff that the Noesis update provide with their hotfix, we can now finish it. So this is, I would say, probably for late October or for the next mapping it out, which would be then October, November, is finally the blueprints in there. Biomes tool is constantly worked on, but as I said before, we're not releasing the Biomes tool until we're really happy with it. We have the color picker, the localization, and UI and dashboard improvements are slowly rolling in. They just don't have a lot of priority at the moment, so that's why we're not really kind of ranking them up. But for the rest of the year, I think what we definitely going to see is, because we know that we're owing this at the moment, is an advanced export, so that you can finally export your maps with a great image quality. I think, I'm not sure to what extent, but I know that Nikita has already started working on it, or at least started to work on the frameworks. macOS ARM, again, I'm not a Mac expert, so I don't know where that sits on priority. Thumbnail rendering, so that you can see a preview of the map in the dashboard, we're pretty far with that. So there is a slight chance that this might find its way into the recent update that's coming next week. And then account management and login is actually something that is slowly going forward. We're not really having a high priority on that. So our goal is by the end of the year, we want to have account management and login ready. Prop eraser is being is waiting to be done. But I think regarding tools, I'm not sure if we start with the prop eraser or if we probably go into paths and roads beforehand. Yeah, and then for the UI, there's going to be a launcher, which means that you can kind of start the application, and then that is prep work for next year. Then you can derive into, do I want to create a world map? Do I want to create a battle map? So the launcher is going to be kind of a kickoff platform for that. Yes, and then we still haven't started working on the layers UI. So internally there are layers, but because of the way that layers are working or didn't work in our first alpha, we said we want to completely rework that. And this is still in the making of having UI discussions and concept discussions of how can we make layers a useful tool. Right.
Cool. I think that's very exciting in terms of looking at what is coming up. And you guys are confident that this will be wrapped up in this year?
I don't want to be over optimistic, but I feel like I said to the team that I would really like to transition from world map making into city map making in the first quarter next year. And by the projections that we're seeing, this is doable. The question is, how much detail do we want to throw into world map editing? So the big question is basically, do we want to have another advancement and improvement round over all the existing tools? This might push back city map making, or which I would personally prefer is, do we want to polish and keep what we have for world map making, but which includes roads and rivers, which includes scales and distance meters, export, blueprints, stuff like that. And can we finish that by the end of the year? I'm pretty sure the answer lies somewhere in between, which is most of it, but not all of it. And in the first quarter, I think it's quite optimistic, and no, not optimistic, realistic, to say that in the first quarter next year, we will be working on the city map.
Okay, super exciting. And that still is alpha, and we will still be in alpha until integration with battle maps. When would we start to think of calling it beta?
So beta, we will call it a beta because that's what a beta is, to my understanding, is an almost finished software that needs a broader feedback on testing. So we will stay in alpha, and we've always said there's an alpha 1 stage that we are currently in. That is, so there's tech alpha, alpha 1, and alpha 2, right? Alpha 1 is only focusing on world maps. Alpha 2 is then focusing on city maps and solar maps. And then we should be ready, by that time, we should be ready to also integrate the battle map editor. And once that is integrated too, so once the battle map editor is in there, we will then go into beta.
Okay, fantastic. Right, just before we go into the demo, I beg your pardon, of the text tool and the latest patch and stuff that's coming up, I've got a few questions for you, Till. And I've been trying to watch to see that they haven't already been answered in chat by Botisaurus, who's running around, I can see. Let's see. Where are we now? Will we be able to get a token that works and looks like the image we see at the start of the stream, with water going anti-clockwise, clockwise, as well as clockwise?
Oh, the image that's back here.
Yes, asks Mr. Demilich. Mr. Demilich. Will we make a token one day?
Of course, yeah. I mean, I did that thing, so I can definitely turn that into a token if you would like to. Sure.
I like that. Hanlon93 asks, is there a way to search for creators in public maps? I'm assuming that's referring to battle maps.
DungeonFog. Yes, battle maps.
Yeah.
Yes, if you put an @ sign in front of and then type the name of the author, the creator, then you should be able to search for. Right. Excuse me.
Makes sense.
For specific artists.
Tavernaut asks, I know this is a very, very much a long shot, but what do you think about the option to import GIS or GIS or GIS data into DEIOS? I may or may not have been geeking out over QGIS to make this question.
I think that's a brilliant idea, and we have that on the table because we have been looking at that from the get-go, from the beginning, because we always said we want to have a geo data model as a database. And as it is working right now, it wouldn't be able to import it directly. But since the map data is basically comparable to an XML file, there is a compatibility, which means that if we have a converter, it would be possible. So it's definitely a long shot. It's definitely not going to happen at let's say in the near alpha 1, alpha 2 future. But it is a great way to expand, because then you could take Earth or GIS data models and import them. And it is doable. So yes.
Okay, fantastic. Another question Hanlon93 is asking, is there a date, I beg your pardon, is there a date for the cool rope and other stuff tool planned, but not yet fixed? That is the new path tool for battle map editor. Sorry, I didn't realize it.
Yeah, that's fine. Internally, we said we would like to have it finished by the end of October, because the end of October is when we are celebrating our 4th anniversary, and it would be amazing to hand that out. I know that Andy is already doing great progress there, but there is a good chance that we can't put it on point end of October, but rather somewhere mid-November. But anyhow, this is the time range you're looking at. So you're looking at something that is either published in late October or somewhere between mid-November. And then the tool will be out there. Okay. And also, interesting fact, the technology that we're building for the paths tool in DungeonFog is basically laying the groundwork for the technology that we're using in DEIOS. So this is going to be the same thing. Which is quite cool, because we kind of, how do you say, hit 2 birds with 1 stone?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. And then just another question. I know it has been answered in chat, but just in case for anyone who's not looking at the chat, is there a scope description of what is wanted for DEIOS?
You mean like what is the checklist of all the things that should?
Yeah. What is the ultimate outcome?
Yes, there is a scope list. So instantly, I would say on Kickstarter, because that's where we presented all of that. I'm not certain if we also have put it on dungeonfog.com/DEIOS. But if you want to see what are we aiming for, then go to the Kickstarter page.
Perfect. And then just finally, Le Mans de Leoncourt asks, has there been any progress with compatibility with Foundry VTT? If not, is it more an Alpha 2 feature?
Okay. So the battle map editor is fully supporting Foundry VTT, although their Foundry VTT just, I think in summer, updated a few things that we still need to adapt and put in. Regarding DEIOS, we're not there yet, because exporting to Foundry is, I think once we have the advanced exporter, it is it suddenly gets into our kind of area of focus where we say, okay, now we can export the map into different formats. Why don't we also export it into a Foundry compatible format?
I don't suppose, and this is just a personal question, with your export options, what is your resolution that you're thinking of being able to export at? Are we talking 75 DPI or 300 DPI for some of those of us who like to use your maps and books?
Again, there's going to be a first implementation and then like a first pass implementation and a second pass, third pass implementation. The ultimate goal is to do the same thing as we do in DungeonFog, where you can pick the DPI and you can create a 300 DPI map.
Okay, perfect.
And export it.
And export it, yeah.
Keep in mind that the big problem with the export on map level, like in DEIOS, is that the maps that you're creating are most likely much, much bigger. We're talking about 80,000 pixels in width and 67,000 pixels in height. You can't bring that on a sheet of paper. So you have to create a viewport where you say, challenge accepted. You have to create a viewport where you say, this is what I want to export. And then when you have that viewport, you can then probably choose and say, to what resolution do I want to export that image? Yes.
Makes sense. All right, let's move on and let's do some demo.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, we need to switch and then it's all yours.
You give me the countdown.
And 3, 2, 1, switch.
All right, so here we are. This is the latest version. I've got a demo build for today, built today. So this is really the newest stuff that I can show you. And what you can see is I quickly threw together a map today for you.
Just quickly threw together.
Yeah, that took, I don't know, 1 hour, 1.5 hours. It's really fast. I mean, you know that. Creating the landmasses and then with the scatter tools, adding trees on top of that is quite fast. I think the most time I spent was, and I know that, and we're going to dive into that, is going into those corners here and like, no, this is still sticking over, and fine-tuning stuff like that took me most time. So this week, and it's on our radar. We are addressing that. Yeah, but that's what we're doing right now. Okay, so here you can also see that we have text labels in there. So what I can do is the new text tool is there. I can activate that. This is not the final UI. This is internal UI. The final UI is being finished for the patch. This is just gobbled together so we can test it. So I can pick fonts. I don't know, let's stick with the Grancer. Text. What are we calling this village here?
That village should be known as Trial.
With 2 A's.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I can place that here. The sizing is not optimal at the moment. This is being revisited because we actually only know the state of 1, whatever 1 is. It's again, those are internal values. And the next best we can do is 2, which is basically double 1. But that it's not going down. So this is being reworked. This is being optimized. So what I can do right now is I can place it, and then I can go in, select it, and scale it down to 64%. That's fine. And then
that's using Control Shift and your mouse wheel.
Yes, the same control set you always use for making things bigger, smaller, or rotate. Like I think Shift Rotate is then going to rotate it. The anchor point for rotation is still a bit weird. That is also being worked on because it's sitting in the upper left corner and it's always rotating around the upper left corner. So I think optimal would be in the center. We will see. We know that this isn't ideal yet and needs to be reworked. So there are a lot of fonts in there. Like if I go in there, we've started with a base selection, but we know, so this is actually something that we also needed from the Noesis UI that is being implemented right now, is a way to tap into your system fonts, because then we can offer you all the fonts you've installed on your system. Right now, this is just a selection of specific fonts that we've integrated, A, for testing, and B, so that DEIOS comes with a preset of fonts that you would like to use. Right. What else? Well, let's have a look at the color picker. So this is the new color picker. The interesting part is that we now have better controls. So you can pick colors from here, or you can enter specific values, and you can also create the hex value or copy the hex value. And what is going to be added is a recently used palette, so that whenever you have already used the color, we're adding that and you can revisit that, which also is a great help, because until the eyedropper hits the live development, this is a great way to pick recently used colors and revisit them. And they're also staging the feature that is coming next afterwards in terms of color picker, and that is recommended palette. I've already started working with Keora on a color palette that is kind of optimized for his art style, and that is going to be integrated in a later patch. So color picker is, as you can see, it is one of the, you wouldn't think about that, but it is one of the most important tools that you are going to work with in a drawing tool. And that means that you really want to have as many options as possible. And so we're not finished with our color picker, but we're just expanding and expanding and expanding with every iteration. And the next two things are the recently used and then the color palette. And of course the eyedropper.
And I see you've fixed the bug of the white and black areas.
Yes, exactly. Well, that was a cheap one. That was just reverting the numbers. So that is that. The other thing is now I can. Oh God, please work. I haven't tested that in the testing build. It was working in the previous build. I can now remove stuff. And it keeps the brushes. So you can really brush to your map, do whatever you like, and then go back in and change the shapes of the landmasses. It's still not the end of road for editing brushes, because I think you should be able to select brushes to delete them or modify them or edit them. But this is advanced working with brushes. Right now, you can always work with the eraser tool if you want to.
And it is a destructive act to the brush data. So in other words, if you've brushed some landmass, you then delete the landmass. If you redraw the landmass, it doesn't.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't show that. Let's go. Do we have an empty island here? Probably. Well, we don't, but that doesn't matter. Let's zoom in there so you can see better. Okay, so if I go in and I subtract from, subtract. Am I subtracting? It looks like I'm adding. And I subtract from that landmass, it is a destructive thing. So now if I go back and add, we will see that there is an artifact now because I have deleted from that. And this is not ideal yet. We know that there should be some kind of blurring, but that's what I was speaking about when I said we have optimized or we are in the process of optimizing the resolution for brushes. So they can be much higher resolution as they are right now. So if I want to get rid of that, all I need to do is I need to go in, pick a green color. 80% is probably too much. Let's go 40%. And then close it off.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Is the selection tool working in the demo?
Yes, of course, but it has been working before. Like I can go in and single select. I can go in and square select. Sorry, that's not correctly visible. I can select text. I can select a combination. So that's working.
And is the text tool currently defaulted to always being above props?
Yes, but not intentionally. So what it should be is, wait. Oh yeah, there you can see. It should inherit a parenting system, but there is currently still a bug in there. So Caramel Ray was properly parented to the landmass because I must have clicked here when I created it. Whereas far view, I think, sorry, go away. Far view is not, and I can't help it. So even if I drag it into the landmass, it's not reading the new parent, which is just a development bug. It's being fixed. So I will be able to decide whether or not I can parent a text with a landmass or with something else.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. Right. Just with regards to the text tool, I don't know if you went over it, but at the moment, I see you've got a black outline around the text tool.
Yes.
We will have all of that ability in the new patch.
Yes. Again, this is just a development UI. I think you will have a lot more options like font weight, bold, italic, stuff like that. All those informations are being added while we finish the UI. I don't know what of that is, again, first pass UI and second pass UI for the text tool, but we already said that text color and text outline are kind of essentials. So you really want to, let's do something else. Let's do another trial here, but let's use, I don't know if it's working. Finger paint, nope, that's not working at the moment. Chinsel, yes, let's use that with a size of 3. So apparently the whole continent or thing is called trial, but it has a probably something like that, sea bluish color and a light blue outline. And let's make the outline size 2. So when I place it down, I can now see that it's doing its best to render that. There are still fragments there, which we're cleaning up at the moment. The important part is if you pay attention to whatever text, let's stay with this here. If you pay attention to it's going to be hard to see on stream, to the sharpness, the crispness of the text. Zooming in does not create fragments, so it's still a crisp and sharp text. And zooming out does the same thing because we are redrawing the text depending on the zoom level. So you always have a crisp labeling, because I think that is very important when you work with maps, is to make sure that wherever you are, your font is not getting blurry or distorted because of size. So the crispness is being re-rendered while you zoom in or zoom out.
Till, do you ever envisage having multiple layers of text that depend on your zoom level? So, for example, I'm looking at the map here, and I'm going, well, Oman's Island.
Yes.
That's a useful name to have at the continental level, or maybe not at the continental level, but at a continent level.
Yes. Yeah. That's exactly, again, this is a second pass feature. We know that already, that we want to have that. That you can define zoom stages where you can say, okay, at this stage, render this text, at this stage, render this text. So this is an information that is basically baked into the text tool. So when you place it down, you decide, or when you select the font, you decide at what thresholds this font is visible. The reason why we're not adding this first pass is because it's making our export more complicated, because on export, you might want to overwrite this rule set. Because you might want to say, okay, I want to export it on a continental view, but I still want all the names in there, even though they're not readable, but just I want to give you an impression of how many cities are there. So we kind of have to do a two-way approach to that problem, where we say, okay, while you're working on the map, this is cool for you, but it's basically just cool for you, and then later on for the people who are viewing the map in an interactive viewer. But if you're exporting the map, rules might be completely different, because you want to control different things when you export stuff. And I think you want that on the fly, and you do not really want to go in, export, and then select 100 different fonts and change the settings for them. But you want to have a global setting where you say also show on export, or, you know, this is where the complications come in that we have to pre-think.
I see a comment there from Botosaurus in chat, is that it's planned for actually every object on the map as well. That would make sense.
Yes,
you don't
exactly.
want an individual tree for a continent.
Yes, exactly.
Fantastic. Okay, some questions here. Damien, the DM, asks, is Fonticon Symbolicon already integrated into our font choices and things? Or?
Yes, it is. Celtic Druid, I think, Lovecraftian Neue, I can't remember all of them, but there is, I think, Slavian Ustav. All of those are the Symbolicon fonts that are working. And yeah, it's ideally opposed to what we do with the Battlemap editor, because the Battlemap editor is an online software that allows us to tap into the online library of Google fonts and our internal font library that we've added through Symbolicon. We're going to kind of go the same way with the desktop software, where we say, instead of the Google font library, we're tapping into your system fonts. So whatever font you have installed will be accessible. Plus, on top of that, we're adding default fonts that, like, for example, Symbolicon fonts, that we think are a great addition to MapMaker software.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I think that's pretty much it for this demo, Till. And I think it has made it so much more map-like, just adding in a few labels and suddenly it's...
So again, summing up, coming back to what you previously said of when is MapMaker finished, I think adding labels is important. I do think that water bodies like rivers and lakes, they shouldn't be done by... what I did here was I subtracted it from the landmass, which created single landmass objects here. And that's not the intention, because this should be part of the landmass. So we definitely want to have something like a water bodies, or however we are calling it in the end. A vector-based drawing tool that allows you to draw objects on the map, comparable to the shapes tool in the Battlemap editor, basically. And ideally, we're going to use the new paths tool for that, because that would allow us to create cool river or road or whatever you come up with, probably even the terrain brushes. So that makes drawing those things much easier.
Are we going to see some new props coming in anytime soon?
Yes. Kiara has already started working on them. And it's not going, I don't think that it's going to, unless he surprises me, it's not going to hit this update, but we have planned for the update that is around our anniversary, we have planned to add additional props there.
Fantastic. And just as a final thought before we move away from this, has there been any thought in terms of collaboration or sharing a map in a joint space?
Like 2 people working on the same map, or just
people.
making, or just sharing a map?
And, well, it's more a case of because we have the ability to create entire continents.
Yes.
Has there been any thought in terms of I'm sharing my map and we can all add to it?
Absolutely. Initially, so again, this goes back. This was even in concept, and partially, this was actually something that kind of messed with our first alpha, was to make sure that this technology is in there already. And we realized that this is just complicating the development stream so much that we kind of switched approach for the current alpha. The best way to picture that is that you're going to have a peer-to-peer connection where there is an original map author that can open the map and invite through his IP, basically like you do with Foundry, invite others. So you can share access to your map, but you can only access this map while the original author has the map open. And that is the only kind of trade-off that we had to do with the initial alpha, because the initial alpha had planned that you're like a project creator, you can publish a map to a specific audience, but you don't have to be actively working on the map while the others might still add things to that. But that is in terms of synchronization and the way that the software had to kind of pass internal information that was so terribly complicated that we said, okay, calm down. We have to keep in mind that that this falls into a kind of edge case scenario. So I think a peer-to-peer solution is absolutely fine.
Makes sense. Okay, there's a bit of a battle going on in chat about 2 moderators trying to ban each other and discovering that they can't. So while that war is raging on, last question, will we see other artists during the alpha phase, or is it just Kaora?
No, it's just Kaora for the alpha phase. It is sorry, it's getting late here. My brain is kind of spacing out. The asset service, which is the distribution server software that is being built for DEIOS and DungeonFog at the moment, is being finished. This is already in review, and for that we're working with external artists as well, so Kaora and Forgotten Adventures. And some of you, if you're interested, are more than welcome to join that, because that is kind of also working for the marketplace. The same software is then going to be distribution software for DEIOS, which means that it connects and downloads software from, assets from there. But I think just from our perspective, if we're working with one specific artist, that allows us to fine-tune everything on that basis. If we're having too many different artists in there, we're having too many different voices who are like, yeah, but you need to tweak it like that so that it works for me, and you have to tweak it like that, then it works for me, which is probably just causing chaos. Kaora is an amazing artist. He has a really great art style. And once we have that worked out, we can then go to different artists and see where do we need to tweak our system so that it works for them as well.
Couldn't agree more. I think that makes absolute sense. Okie dokes. Till, let's switch back to our regular spacing. We've only got a few things left to chat about in this month's broadcast. And 3, 2, 1. They're still there. And what we have to talk about is this. Okay, so that was the trailer for the map battle madness that Till and I participated in on the 23rd. Now, on Thursday the 30th, on my YouTube channel, that's youtube.com/how to be a great GM, or twitch.tv/great GM, we will be deciding the winner, or rather, you would be deciding the winner. Till, how does that work?
Okay. First of all, if you've missed the show, I've uploaded a recap video that's only 13 minutes. So I've tried to compress the 4 hours of map battle into a 13-minute biteable-sized little recap video for you. So go to YouTube on DungeonFog. You can find it there. Go to our DungeonFog.com/map battle madness landing page. I've uploaded it there too. And you can watch the recap if you want to still join the voting, because you are going to decide whether or not Guy is going to be the champion of the Battle of the Madness, or I am. And I can already tell you, it's not looking good for me. So if you're not helping me somehow, you already see the new champion here.
We'll find out. Time will
We will
tell.
find out. So on September the 30th at 6 p.m. UTC, which is 8 p.m. here in Vienna, or I think 7 p.m. For you, Guy, in Britain, we are going to find out, which means live. The voting is going to close while we're streaming, so we both do not know how this is going to end until we're pressing the stop button and we close the voting, and then we will look at it, which means you can go and vote now, or you can join us on stream, and while we're reviewing the stuff, talking a little bit about our experience and showing you some funny bits and pieces of what has happened through the show, you can still go to our voting page and vote there.
There you go. And it proves to be, or it should be, a lot of fun. I mean, we had a lot of fun.
We had so much fun.
Yes, come and join us for that. Right. So then the last thing I have.
Yes, Guy, there's an important thing, right? Please talk about it, because it just went live today, right? And it is super successful.
Yes, so this is my new book that's just launched on Kickstarter. And for those of you that don't know, Till and I have been friends for a very long time. So he very, very generously said I could talk very quickly about this. So this is the practical guide. Sorry.
No, sorry, finish the sentence.
Oh, I was going to say, so that is the practical guide to becoming a great GM, which is a 250-page book on helping you run your game better. So if you are a DM, a GM, a storyteller, a narrator, this is the book for you. So that's on Kickstarter right now, and we've already smashed through the first 2 stretch goals. It's just absolute chaos. We've got quite a bit of time still to go, so many more stretch goals to come. So
also, I think it's worth mentioning, you have a chapter about map making in there. So if you're an avid map maker and you feel like, why is that on a DEIOS stream? It's not only because Guy's a friend and he's hosting the show, so it's kind of an honor to give the platform. But also, I think it is going to be a very cool addition for everyone who's running games, to look at things and ways to improve your map making process.
Absolutely. There are actually 2 sections on map making within the book. One is on world map making, and then another one is on battle map making, and how to do it if you've never been to a place or have any idea. Anyway, it should be a lot of fun. Till, thank you so much for chatting with us today and for demoing the new patch, which I don't think anyone can wait for. We're all very keen for this new one, as far as I can see in chat. So definitely, you've got us excited for October. Till, are you streaming, and where can people find you when you are streaming?
So usually I would be streaming this Thursday, my regular Welcome to the Madness. This is not going to take place this week because we are hosting the award ceremony of the Map Battle Madness, where if you do not do anything about that, we're going to crown Guy. But next time I will be back on the DungeonFog stream is Tuesday next week, where we are going to look at the next iteration of the Paths tool, because Andy did quite quite a lot of amazing updates to that. And I'm going to show you the latest prototype. And we're going to discuss that a little bit. And then there will be most likely Thursday next week, another regular map making. Welcome to the Mapness with me at 6 p.m. UTC on Thursdays.
Lovely. So then, from us at the DungeonFog Studios to all of you, thank you so much for your questions, for your interactions, and for being part of tonight's show. Until next month, I suppose all that we have to say is goodbye.
Thank you very much, and happy map making. Ha! I was faster.